Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to Firing Synapses. This is a show all about exploration. I will learn what makes you, you. This includes your hobbies, passions, whatever else drives an emotion. However, if you want to come on just to vent about what's currently bothering you, I'm perfectly fine with that as well. My goal for this show is for you to have a good time, learn something, and have the opportunity to talk about what you normally would not get a chance to share with others. Thank you, and enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. For those return listeners, I thank you very much. I appreciate all the love. For those of you who are new to this endeavor, I am your host, Matt. Joining me on today's episode, the host of the Flapping Bungs
podcast. The host of the Flapping Gums podcast, Meta World Thief, a.k.a. Meta World Jesus, a.k.a. Mr. Steal Your Blunt. Thank you for having me back on. If you've listened to this podcast before, you know me, you love me, you're happy to have me. Yay! Honestly, you're welcome. My time is my money, and I would rather give my financial stakes and any ducats that I have to a go-getter like Mashu Hamadi.
Thank you very much, Meta. This is why I always have you on. Also joining me on the show, man, I'm having trouble with words today. The host of Smoking Wid podcast. Please, everyone, welcome Garrett to the show. Hi, Garrett.
What's going on? I don't know if I can match his energy, honestly. That's just
listen here, brother. No one can match my energy pound for pound. But here's the thing, yeah. If you just kind of hang in there, I'll carry you to the finish line. Yeah.
So normally I'll cut that part out because, that's my only part that I'll try to get a restart. But you know what? I think I'll leave it on. So on today's episode, we're going to be talking about cannabis. And so I know, Garrett, this is the first time you're on the show. But
the 90s rapper Canabis, who famously battled LL Cool J and lost.
I take it that's a true story. But what I was going to tell Garrett is, since he's new, I'm sure he's not aware of this rule, but as a guest on the show, you have to send your product over, whatever you're trying to promote. So when the show's off air, I'll give you my address and you can send me some things.
I can send you whatever you want, man. I got beans, I got weed, I got extract. What do you need, man? I'll send it your way.
Bro, I had to record my podcast on CDs and send it to him. I was like, who even has a CD player? But he made me do it because I was a guest on his podcast.
Well, isn't that what whoever the big government people, they're sending the UFO shit, they sent it out on a CD, all that aliens and shit just recently? You really not know what I'm talking about, guys?
No.
Come on. So,
I don't know about the CD part, but I've talked about aliens at least the last 3 podcasts.
Yeah, it was just the entire compilation of whatever they've whoever Area 51 or whatever, they compiled it all because they had to, right? And so they sent it out on a CD. And I don't know what the purpose was that of, but some guy converted it all to PDF so people could read it.
Oh, I get what you're saying. And I literally spoke about this on my podcast yesterday, where in the COVID relief fund bill that was passed that got us to $600, they put in a thing where every intelligence agency has 180 days to release all the information that they have on extraterrestrials and UFOs.
So I got a question about the CD. I mean, wouldn't it make more sense to be DVD or Blu-ray? You would think that you got a big box of compilation CDs. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the CD can only hold so much, right? I remember burning CDs back in the day, and I can only hold like 20 songs.
Yeah, unless you drop the quality way down. It's like,
right.
do I want to fit more on here, or do I want good quality?
Yeah, but do you guys remember when MP3 CDs came out and you could put like 150 songs if you had the right CD player?
They were the little mini ones, right?
No. It was, you had to have an MP3 CD compatible like tape or head unit in your vehicle, and you could format it in a way that you could put like 150 to 200 songs depending on the quality.
Right, yeah. And then you could put it in like subfolders and then be like, all right, let me skip. And I'm like, all right, I got more than 20 songs. I don't have to go through my 6 CD changer in the back of the car. Right. I could just throw in one and be good to go.
Yeah, I just skipped straight to the MP3 player. I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Fair enough. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I've just turned 27, actually.
7. All right, so I'm 33. That 5-year gap is literally the gap where I saw a bunch of nonsense fail. You know what I'm saying?
See, and I'm 38, so I got even a couple more years on you too. So I've seen, more things come and go. Hey-o.
Don't let this motherfucker talk about Laserdisc.
Oh my God, got some 8-tracks.
I wish I had my dad had a whole big collection of 8-tracks with his car. Had 8-tracks. I wanted a Laserdisc player just because it looked so awesome and shiny, and as opposed to like a record, which was like just black and sometimes you get a red.
You know how big a Laserdisc is?
Yeah, that thing was it was. If you got tired of listening to the album, you could hurt somebody with it good.
You know, it was the first time I saw a Laserdisc. It was 2003. I must have been like 15 or 16, and they had just gotten them in my school as like some revolutionary technology. And the science teacher brought out like some documentary, and it was way bigger than a record.
Yeah, you had to hold it with 2 hands. I mean, there was no like I can hold it on the nub, I guess, or whatever the center part is. Yeah, this was massive. So we got completely.
Would you call it the cornhole?
No, that's way too big. It's not 9 inches from the back. So I know we got way off topic. So let's get back to topic at hand. This is what we're actually coming about. So we're talking about cannabis today. So Garrett, you're the one that came to me and said you're passionate about it. And I know for the people who are listening, they can't see your room, but it's very cannabis friendly, I would say.
Yeah, that's my girl. She just decorated this. This is like her room. We have a 2-bedroom apartment, and this is like her room specifically. But I do have over in the corner there a little my corner that I get to grow one plant in.
Hey, Garrett, can we be honest? They're all her rooms.
Yeah,
I live with my girlfriend as well, and it's like some days I wake up looking for a specific item of clothing, and I'm like, nothing in this house is mine. Where is my stuff?
I think the one room that I actually do have control over is one
bathroom.
My closet. Well, yeah. No,
my your closet?
Yeah, that's it.
Dude. Here's my beef with that, right? So I'm supposed to have domain and dominion over my closet, but then sometimes she'll find something somewhere and just shove it in my closet like it belongs there. That don't go there.
Well, it does.
According to them.
Everything is theirs.
All right, I'll stop derailing. I'm sorry, guys.
So Garrett, we're like I said, we're trying to talk about cannabis. I mean, this will be a good like after we've already been induced by cannabis. But so kind of how did like you get started? Just for recreation? Did you do it for medical purposes? Just to make money?
Actually, no. I don't know that I've ever actually made money off of selling or anything. So I first got introduced to it back when I was like 16 in high school, and I had a buddy. I just went over to his house, and it was his buddy's house. So it was a guy I didn't even know. And we ended up smoking, because that was the whole purpose of going over there, out of this like sweet 2-liter rigged bong that they had made, as it goes. And we ended up microwaving a bunch of stuff that like freezer food that wasn't recommended to be microwaved. It's like, do not microwave on the thing. And we watched Starsky and Hutch and laughed our ass off. So that was kind of how I started. And then since then, I've just kind of smoked recreationally. I've had my medical card just to grow legally in the state. And yeah, I don't know. I picked it up and never let it go.
For the record, and those of you listening at home, he said to grow legally. He put a in the middle, and it sounds like he said illegally. I want to clarify.
No. Grow legally.
Don't worry, bro. I'm like a hood lawyer. I got you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
The floor is yours.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Because I'm enthusiastically enjoying cannabis right now. Did you get high the first time you smoked?
Yeah, actually. Because that's funny, because a lot of people are like, oh, no, I don't get. Did you?
I didn't. I definitely didn't.
Really? No, I got really high to the point to where they started fucking with me because they were high. Because like I said, I went to a friend's house, and this kid I didn't really know very well, and he was like 2 grades above us, so he was like a little senior, and I wasn't I didn't know him very well, and so like I was high, and then we were just like laughing and whatnot, and then all of a sudden he's just like, "Get the fuck out of my house," and I was like, "What? Wait, what?" And he was like, "No, I'm serious. You need to leave." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm high as fuck right now. Like, you expect me to just drive away?" Like, no. And then he was just completely fucking with me. But like, it was, yeah, I got high for sure.
I've definitely witnessed that. Like, I've never been that guy, but I've witnessed people like drink for the first time or smoke for the first time. And then the person who's the host is like, yeah, gotta go, bro. And they're in no condition to go at all whatsoever.
And did they mean it, or was it like a complete joke?
Half and half, 50
Oh
50.
no. That's kind of fucked up.
I mean, yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's super fucked up. And my next question is going to be, do you remember the first time you made a deal with God to save you from smoking too much? Like,
Oh.
the first time you started, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yes.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that it was from smoking too much. I want to say that it was RSO, dude. Like, me and RSO have this.
Wait, what does RSO mean?
I'm sorry, what? You know what that means though, right?
No, I don't.
Oh shit. Okay, so Rick Simpson oil. So it's basically a
Oh,
form
I
of,
know what that means. I've never heard RSO though.
yeah, it's just the common way to say it. But yeah, Rick
Sorry.
Simpson oil is basically ethanol extracted cannabis, and so the reason for doing it through alcohol or ethanol is to maintain like the full cannabinoid profile, and so it's like
Correct.
the full scope of the plant rather than just stripping it for the THC or CBD or whatever the fuck you want.
Yep.
I'm allowed to cuss, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. It just comes out. They're like flavor words. So yeah, but that is like extremely potent stuff. So they'll give it to you in like a gram syringe. It's kind of ghetto looking, but it's like this dark liquid that's very thick. And they say to do like a rice grain amount, and I did probably like a quarter of the syringe because I was like, no, they're wrong. Like, I've been smoking for 5 years. Like,
so a quarter of a syringe, that's like 50, 60 grains of rice.
Roughly, yeah. So if you had something and it was like 70%, and it was a full gram RSO, what you have is, I think, somewhere along the lines of 7,000 milligrams in that. 700 or 7,000. I don't know. I'm not the best at math. But yeah. So a quarter of that would be what, 250. Something like that. I don't know. I'm not great at math, but like,
bro, I'm not an accountant.
Yeah, I'm not either. My girlfriend's an accountant, but not that kind of accountant.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, no, it was like, and I don't know if you guys have fucked with edibles too much, but like,
Yes.
I'm pretty decent on like 100 milligrams nowadays, but like doing that for the first time, doing like 200 to 250 milligrams, I was at a point to where like I was sitting and watching TV, and I was like, almost like my brain, I had to think about telling my heart to beat. Like, that's kind of the mind space that I was at. And so I just decided to go lay down, and I fell asleep, and I slept for like 14 hours.
Here's my stance on edibles, right? They are so wildly unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
And even if let's say they were predictable, it's unpredictable how it's going to affect you depending on how hydrated you are, how much food you have in your stomach, and different things like that.
And
so, all that shit. So over the past year or so, I started doing firecracker edibles. So for those at home, it's a single dose serving of edibles. You can go anywhere from 0.5, like half a gram to a full gram, depending on your perceived tolerance. And you just, you preheat it in the oven, you put it into some fatty shit, you put it back in the oven, and you go and you eat that. Now, that being said, I now have my formula that works for me. I know how much food I need to eat this one dose of edible. And it works so much better for me to make my own now because I know how to prepare for it. Like, I'm not going to go out for dinner and then have an edible because I'm going to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning being like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, edibles are definitely unpredictable. I've had many people give me edibles that they made, and I almost refuse to take them because the dosing is so, like you said, unpredictable that I don't even want to fuck with it. I've been there. I've been there 2 or 3 times now, and I don't like it. It's just not comfortable for sure.
You know what is actually the most common problem with homemade edibles, and people don't even discuss this or acknowledge this as an issue? Even if you do the dosing properly and you do, the process of making it into a butter or an oil properly, some people aren't able to like evenly dispense the edibles in, like, let's say a brownie sheet. So some brownies will be stronger than others because
Right.
they're amateur bakers. And that's a problem too that no one really discusses or discloses.
So you have to be good in the culinary arts and yeah, pretty much in the culinary arts to get them all nice and even. You don't want, if you get like the corner piece is very potent, but the one in the center has like nothing. So
Like a lasagna or a Sicilian pie. What do you think? Am I bugging on that, or what do you think, Garrett?
Oh, wait, what about the lasagna?
About the uneven distribution of
No.
THC throughout a product.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, no, I agree with that. And then I want to say too that the majority, because I've worked in the retail space, I've worked pretty much every avenue of cannabis up here in Washington. But in the retail space, I've had so many people come and say that they don't like to smoke, or then they want to do edibles because the first time that they experienced cannabis, or they're so sorry, the first time that they had experienced cannabis was through an edible, and that completely warped their
Turned them off.
interpretation of it. And so like that, and that's almost 99% of the time that people get afraid of trying cannabis again is because they took an edible from somebody who gave it to them and it was just improperly dosed and they had a bad time.
But that kind of goes back to the if you don't distribute your oil or butter correctly, you're going to get higher doses in some. So some piece might be completely overdose and one piece might be underdose. So you get that variance of product. But
here's what I'll say to that point. I think the point that Garrett is trying to make is that people's first exposure to cannabis is through an edible. Now, I'm not sure how familiar you are with edibles versus inhalables, but an edible is processed by your liver in a different type of way. It's an entire different, I don't want to call it a drug, but it's an entire different chemical process and substance. And look, it's like getting on a really fucking huge roller coaster. And once you start going up that hill and you're like, no, take me off. No, it's too late. It's already too late. Whereas if you smoke cannabis, you can eat like a fatty sandwich and chill yourself out. Fatty sandwich, lots of water, take a shit, take a piss. Honestly, you want to sober yourself up off of cannabis, you go in another room, you jerk off, you bust a nut, you're going to be sober as a judge. But
you're not wrong.
Yeah, but once you're on that liver, what is it called? 5 whatever HT metabolite, whatever the fuck it's called, where it goes to your liver as an edible, it's a whole different substance regarding cannabis ingestion and processes in your body.
Yeah, I would definitely relate it more. It's like a more psychedelic experience for sure. It synthesizes completely different than if you're inhaling it. So yeah, I agree with you 100% on that.
So I mean, that was kind of my next question was like, so obviously there's different ways to take it in, whether it be edibles or, smoking it. So do each of the ways you take it in will affect how quick it kicks in, B, how long it lasts, how you can neutralize it if you took too much. I mean, what's kind of the process behind that?
Garrett, you got this, and I'll fill in the gaps.
All right. So are you saying like what would be the best way to initially do it, or what are you asking again? Sorry.
So I have very little experience. I had a couple edibles. I tried smoking, but I don't like. I'm used to smoking cigars, so I don't actually inhale. So I kind of missed that process type of thing. So as someone who's pretty much on the outside, but trying to try type of thing, the different processes, how did they differ for, how long it takes to affect you? How long does it last? Once you get there, is there anything that you can do to calm it down? You just said the edible is like, once you take, you're gripping it and ripping it. You take it and you go.
Basically, he's asking, what are the different ways that weed affects you, or cannabis rather, depending on the different forms of ingestion?
Oh, for sure. Okay, yeah. So, like when you're inhaling it, any way you want to do it, concentrate.
Also,
joint,
hold on real quick. Also, an important thing that he was saying, he wants to know how long they last compared to other versions of ingestion.
Oh, for sure. And it's going to depend kind of on like your tolerance to it. So if you're smoking it, I would say like for me, it generally lasts anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how much I smoked and what I smoked. Say if it's like a gram of flour, anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour. Whereas like an edible, depending on the dosage, of course, that could be multiple hours. And there are ways to combat like your high if it's too much. I've never really had to worry about it too much, or I've been too far gone that I don't want to even think about ingesting anything else. But like CBD is one way to kind of cut that, because you have two CB receptors, your CB1 and your CB2 receptors, and that's all just part of your cannabinoid system within your body, and you have little receptors in your liver, in your brain, in your lungs, and so. And if you have THC talking to one and CBD talks to the other, CBD will kind of intercept the receptors from taking in that THC and kind of negate or cut the effects of THC. So
can I ask you to do me a favor, sir? While I know exactly what you're talking about, can you explain to those listening at home the difference between THC and CBD, and then why they counteract? You know what I mean? Because I know he doesn't know what you're saying.
Yeah, that's why I was just gonna. I was waiting for a space. I'm like, I understand that there's THC, which apparently is that's pretty much what gives you your euphoric feeling, correct?
Well, let him tell you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, euphoric is one way to describe it, but there's a lot of different ways. I mean, it could make you super paranoid and anxious if you have it just by itself. But so THC is going to be like your psychoactive component of cannabis, your main psychoactive component of cannabis, and then CBD is going to be more of the I guess like it's quote unquote the healing properties, or can be. I mean, there's things that'll like anti-anxiety, anti-inflammatory things. So with that anti-anxiety property, and you have this THC, whereas if you had it in your raw form, such as like a distillate, which you distill it down into just THC and you just ingested that. I forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, so THC is going to be your main psychoactive component, but there's like a bunch of subcategories which we won't get into today, but those are the two main ones that I think you're asking about.
Okay, so let me break that down for you. THC is the shit that gets you high, and it's in cannabis. And CBD is all the stuff that makes you mellow in cannabis, and also has healing properties and things like that. So what he's suggesting, if you feel like you're getting too high, then you can counteract too much THC with a little bit of CBD. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yep.
Okay. Now,
and
I want to take this a little bit further, though, to be honest. We're living in the first time, maybe the last 5 years or so, on a mainstream level, the first time in human history where CBD has been able to be cultivated separately from cannabis and its other properties, where we can go ahead and you can smoke a joint that only relaxes you and doesn't get you high, so to speak, air quotes, where you can put an oil on your knee and you'll have like healing on your knee, but you won't feel that psychoactive experience that people do when they smoke a joint. Am I wrong, Garrett?
No, you're exactly right. And like you're saying, you can put that on your joint. It's going to act
Perfect.
like any other salve, but it has like that extra property of that CBD, which is going to be like I said, an anti-inflammatory, and that is the main cause of a lot of pain is inflammatory. Actually,
actually, and this is something I wholly subscribe to, and this is why I live my life the way I do in a lot of different ways. But everything comes from inflammation. Like if you look at the root cause of pretty much everything besides cancer or genetic diseases, everything comes from inflammation. And if you can cut down on that, hey, why not? Why not?
So when people go to like for medical, uses, are they using more CBD than THC, or is it like case dependent on if you say I have whatever, go get cannabis, are they looking more for the CBD for the healing properties type of thing, or?
Yeah, I would say if that's what they're after. Like if you're battling something like I deal with a little bit with like anxiety, I'll get that like weird buzziness. I don't want to take something high in THC because it's just going to accelerate that. Like,
and there's pretty much well, I mean, I know there's not, but there are essentially like two and a half like categories, correct? Like sativa and the other one,
indica,
yeah,
and then hybrids.
Right.
Yeah, but everything nowadays is pretty much what we call is just like a polyhybrid, where everything is just a fucking jumbled mess. And there are dominants, but it kind of can be tricky because you can have different what we call phenotypes. Where say you have this one strain. Let's just take OG Kush for example.
Yes.
Because everybody has heard of OG Kush. You can have like 20 different seeds of OG Kush and pop all those seeds with varying outcomes. So you could have something that may feel a little more uppity or buzzy or sativa, quote unquote, to make it easy. And then you'll have some that will just like smack you into the couch, which are more like indica. And so, I mean, it is pretty variable. And that's why the rec market is in such a fucking weird state right now, is because everything honestly is kind of fucked up here, because you can take a strain and without ramifications from any kind of government or enforcement or anything, you could call something completely different and rebrand it as something completely different. And that's where the rec market is a really kind of scary place for somebody to really start, unless you're talking to somebody who knows their shit.
Okay, can I give my 2 cents on that? There is an exploding situation where not only, like you said, what did you call it? I had never heard that term, but I agree with it, and that's what's happening. Like quantum cross hybrids or some shit like that.
Polyhybridization.
Same shit. Come on, I'm saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're saying is right, because not only are things being like they're having their names changed and used for marketing purposes, or maybe I'll grow the same exact strain and just change the name, and then people think it's my strain. But
right.
I've also seen the opposite, where people try to make things stronger and make things stronger. And then I kind of compare this to like old school fast food. I know I'm older than you, but I remember when a bacon, egg, and cheese tasted good from McDonald's. You know what I mean? And now I eat it and my face feels greasy for 6 hours. Haven't had one in 10 years.
Top of your mouth.
Yeah. And you're thirsty.
Processed.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And my perfect example in the cannabis form for that is, I'm going to say that I was here in New York City for New York City Sour Diesel, which the internet wasn't great back then. So you used to like, Google was fledgling. I was mostly using Yahoo, Alta Vista at that time. Like, it was that early. No, I already knew he was full of shit. I don't trust the foreigners with my answers. I'm sorry, Jeeves. If you're willing to submit to me so easily for free, I don't want to hear you have to say, you yes, man. Anyway, New York City Sour Diesel. First time I saw it. You guys watch The Simpsons?
Yes.
I used to.
Okay, so you know the intro where Homer has the glowing green rod and he pulls it out of his back and throws it into the street? Oh, did you catch a fly?
I thought it caught your rod that you threw.
Oh, yeah. Okay, my bad.
I have fungus gnats all over because these plants and shit, and I live honestly in the woods in this apartment, and there's little gnats that just fly all over the place.
For those of you at home, this dude just caught a fly with a pair of chopsticks like Mr. Miyagi. Who can't witness this like on video? That just happened. So
Yeah,
like
that's
I
why
was
it's
saying,
audio only.
New York City, New York City sour diesel, boom, boom, boom. It looked like the glowing rod. It was fucking neon green. It smelled like a skunk died in my apartment. I would smoke like, you smoke a dime bag and you got to take a 2-hour nap. And I've seen it evolve to where it's at now. And it has like hints of kush and it doesn't stink. It stinks, but in a different way. And I feel like strains like that have become victim to what you were saying, the quantum mechanics of the cannabis universe. As
Yeah, no, and actually, I was just talking to a buddy about this. Actually, my co-host, and it was back in the day. Like all weed just smelled like skunk roadkill. Like it was just dank shit. And now,
or there were two types. The other type was it smelled like old Puerto Rican man's cologne.
okay, we didn't have that over here, but
Trust me, my dad's an old Puerto Rican man, and sometimes.
yeah, but now they this polyhybridization or quantum mechanics, as you want to call it, is breeding for terpenes, which are all those flavonoids and smells that you smell off of it, and they want to get those candy terpenes or orange terpenes, which are just the flavors and smells that come off the plant. And that's why they're doing all this polyhybridization, because they just want to breed for that stuff. They want it to smell good. They want it to look purple. Remember when purple weed came out?
Yep.
I remember purple weed came out, and it was just the biggest fucking deal. But now everything's purple.
Yo, so to that point, and this is something I've been theorizing for a minute. Do you think? I mean, obviously, you do think this. People are obviously growing to have like more, let's call them attractive trichomes, right?
Yeah,
like you want your shit looking dusty for a good Instagram pic so you could sell your strain to someone else.
Yeah, we call that bag appeal.
Yeah. Oh, ooh.
Yeah, you just want it to
bag
look
appeal, curb appeal, bag appeal. Yeah.
But also
Matt Hamady, do you know what trichomes are?
No, other than if you grab 3 cones from your bathroom and then stick them together, you'd have a trichome.
Actually, the trichome is the story of you going to an ice cream truck and you get 3 ice cream cones.
Yes, can I try those cones? Yes.
Garrett, can you put them on, if you don't mind?
Oh, well, what trichomes are?
Yeah.
They're the little sticky pods that kind of grow. They're basically it's the resin of the weed plant, and that's what holds all your THC, CBD, and all the other shit, terpenes and whatnot. And that is they kind of look like little mushrooms if you have a magnifying glass, and they vary from clear to cloudy to amber to purple, and those are essentially what makes all your weed sticky.
So, like when you talk about your bag appeal, you kind of, if you like an ideal situation, you said you kind of want it to look cloudy and like either like purple or whatever.
You want it to be frosty, definitely. But there are certain things that people look for, and a lot of people, I think, in the recreational market, and this is probably the worst offense that the rec market kind of started to do was or make popular is putting percentages on the bag, which is honestly one of the worst things that they could possibly have done, in my opinion.
And why do you say that?
Well, can I ask? Wait. When you say percentages, what are you referring to? What kind of percentage?
Oh yeah, okay. So like THC percentages, that's the main one that people look for. If you were to look at, I guess you can't really look back in time, but if you were to look at like weed we were talking about when it just smelled like skunky roadkill, we didn't look at percentage. We didn't test back in the day. So we have no real idea of what, we were looking at, but they have kind of just guessed and come up with something along the lines of like, between 12 and 17%. But nowadays,
wait a second. Again, you're younger than us. So what I will tell the fans listening at home is the estimates come from, law enforcement, FBI, all that shit, taking the weed that they find and testing all of it. And all the way up through like the late 80s, it averaged like 6 to 8%. 8% was great shit. And then in the 90s, it, like he said, jumped into like 12. And then when hydro came out, then it started jumping and jumping and jumping. And then at the same time, that hydroponic, which I'm sure you'll explain to him in a second, at the same time, hydroponic harvest or plantationing became available. At the same time, places were also giving medical marijuana laws a shot. And at that point, you started seeing a convergence of big money and big research with, redneck research, and people were figuring out the best ways to harvest the best marijuana. And now, so from the 80s to right now, weed THC potency percentage wise has gone from, let's say, max 14% to what, 38%? I've seen 38%.
Ooh, 38% is probably
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
But I've seen it. I've gotten consistent 32 though.
Yeah, but
for years.
Even that consistent 32 could be, whatever company is paying off the, just stroking someone on the side.
Also true.
Like, yeah, 30 is pretty incredible to pull off. It happens in a couple different cultivars, like pretty standard, but it's still even pushing some boundaries. And it's not ideal also, because what you're doing there is pushing all the other important things out. When you're just jacking up one number, you're pushing everything back down.
And there are also websites that sell seeds which are CBD heavy and supposedly don't get you that high, and it's a CBD flower.
So
Right.
I had a question a while back and just couldn't get it in, but so when you talk about your different strands of OG Kush, or I can't think of anything else, but if assuming that no one like modifies it, is it going to be the same if I pick it up in Washington or if I pick it up in Florida? Is that kind of like I said, once again, unless someone messes with it, is it going to be the same no matter where you get it?
It would depend on how that plant was actually, how it started, essentially. So if you took seeds and you planted those seeds, in one seed in Florida and one seed up here in Washington, no, they're not going to be the same, because they're like brothers and sisters, right? Or they're not twins. So to circumvent that and to keep stuff, and that this is where a lot of old school strains like ChemDog, OG Kush, stuff like that comes from, is cloning. And so I don't know if you guys are familiar with, you could do this with multiple different plants, but cloning is just taking one piece of that plant and taking some hormone, in this case, like rooting hormone, and putting that around where you cut, and then propagating that into something and making sure it's in 100% humidity. And you can do this, like I said, with multiple different plants. They do that with apple trees. Basically, all apple trees are
almost any plant if you have the right technique.
Right. Yeah. So that's pretty much how you keep the same thing. But even then, even if you grew it in the same clone, you took two clones and you took one to Florida and one up here in Washington, they have different growing environments, and the people growing them have different growing practices, and those are all going to influence how that plant grows and produces. So it's really tricky to kind of say that this is the same as this in any scenario.
Would it be close? Like if you like a blind taste test or whatever, like would it be possible to say, well, this is probably this because I recognize how it hits, how quick it activates, or is it kind of, not really? If that makes
just
sense.
from like a taste test, there's so much out there that like you can't just like say this tastes like this, so they're the same.
Yeah, I agree with that. And let's be honest, the best weed connoisseur, if you did a blind taste test, you could probably guess strain dominance at best. Like this is a Kush, this is a haze,
Right. There are definitely terpene or flavor profiles that match with like even like sativa and indica stuff, and that's kind of one of the newer things that I've seen within the past like 3 to 5 years, that they're kind of leaning on that to determine strain dominance as far as like sativa and indica go. Because if you think of something like, here's a terpene, limonene, which is responsible, of course, for like lime, lemon, and citrus terpenes. And you think of like something like pine sol, when you smell pine sol and you're like cleaning, you feel kind of invigorated. It's just kind of something in the brain that like clicks with that. And so you're just going to feel that kind of like energy. Whereas like if you have something like linalool, which is like a lavender based terpene, and you think of lavender, right? That's going to be like more of like a calming, sedative kind of terpene. So that's kind of the method they're looking at as far as current is that I've seen. But also like genetic marker testing is something that they're also looking at, but people are really skeptical to do that too, because breeders are really prideful of their genetics and don't want people taking them and using them and abusing them.
So you mentioned about strain dominance, and like Kush and Haze and stuff like that. Is that kind of like, for lack of terms, like a flavor profile? You can taste more or feel or whatever more of one thing over the other? I mean,
yeah, and I don't think anybody who's new to it is going to notice, but like you said, like a connoisseur or somebody who's been smoking for a while is going to pick that up pretty quickly, especially in the smell. Like the first initial smell is going to give you a pretty good idea of what's there.
And then what about like, we talked about this about growing techniques. When you're talking about hydroponics, is that like, I almost want to say revolutionize the growing process? I mean, or how did that affect, growing technique?
Well, if you've ever seen Trailer Park Boys, you'll learn about hydro. But
I mean, I watch Weeds on Showtime. Does that count for anything?
Sure, yeah. I don't know enough about weeds to anyway. But
I've seen it a few times. They weren't wrong. It wasn't the best technique, but they weren't wrong.
Hydroponics is basically a soilless media, or I mean, yeah. So the traditional way to grow, right, would be just plant something in the ground in a soil. And that's kind of been phased out as far as like mainstream and like big corporations. They'll definitely use more of like a hydroponic system, which is basically just like continuously irrigated. Whereas like a soil, and that's how I grow a soil, because it's just super easy to maintain. I only have to water it every 2 days or so. But hydroponics is just generally a forever getting irrigated, cycled through the day, letting it dry out, and then, or it could be completely submerged in water. You could have your whole root system submerged in water. And I've grown that way a couple times, but the way to kind of like get around that, because like you can really make a plant drown in water if you just have the roots just sitting in water. You have to have oxygen going in that water. So yeah, I guess that's the big difference between hydroponics and soil.
So with hydroponics, is it kind of like floating in a sense? I mean, there's like no like soil at all, or
no. So the reason they call it soilless is because it's not like building blocks of soil, right? Soil is like comprised of like humus, which is like really, really fine, dark coffee like dirt. And then
that you put on pita bread and spent $12 for in the wrap.
Yeah, humus. Which it can be like earthworm poop, and then there's compost that they usually add into that, and then some sort of aeration, whether it be perlite or rocks or sand or whatever.
For those of you at home, perlite is a styrofoam, those little like white beads that you find in your potted plants, and they provide like aeration.
Yeah, if you got Miracle Grow, you've seen perlite. It's just that little white, those little white rocks. It's kind of tricky to say soilless in hydroponics because there is a media there. So in our facility here that I work at, we use cocoa coir. I don't know how to say that, but it's basically coconut husks that are just ground up to like a bark-like consistency, and it has a dry out period that you will need to continuously feed. So it retains water, but not as good as soil. So it drains really easily. And then there's other medias like peat moss, which that's all over and like harvested, I think in like Florida. And that retains moisture like a motherfucker, but they still consider it hydroponics. And then hydroponics can also mean literally, like you said, floating in water, but you do need to have some kind of aeration to it. And then there's other stuff like aeroponics and other shit, aquaponics, that I just really won't get into because that's out of my element.
So, I mean, because like some of those ones, the corn husk and coconut husk that like don't retain the water, that's why you're constantly like cycling through, because it's like you're using up any oxygen or whatever it's going to take, and then just constantly replenishing it.
Yeah, and not to get, and I just didn't want to get too like sciencey into it, because there is a lot of reasoning behind why they would call it hydroponics. There's something that's called a cation exchange, and that's when you start talking about like elements and how they interact with each other and how they either complement or antagonize each other. And that's just like really an in-depth part of that conversation that I don't really think we need to get into.
I mean, I don't know about anybody else who's listening, but I'm sure like after this episode, I might have to listen to this a few times just to kind of get all the terminology and maybe do some more research on it myself. But yeah, I mean, you're throwing all these terms, which is fine, because like I said, I'm coming from a background that I don't really know a lot about it. I mean, I had a couple edibles, like I said, I smoked a couple times, but to get as in depth as this is definitely, it's not going to be done in an hour's worth for sure.
Right. And that's why I'm trying to keep it like basic-ish. I didn't want to get too technical, because I can if you want, but I really don't think that it's necessary for your podcast. And I talk about
bad for the questions.
Podcast that's like weed focused. So, I mean, but what were you saying, Metta?
I was just saying my bad for the questions. That's how we got derailed and in depth.
No, I mean, I like learning things. I mean, so I'm trying to soak it all in, and like I said, I'll go more in depth of the pearl lights and
you really want to learn something? You really want to learn something, Garrett? What is your knowledge of cannabis and its relationship to glaucoma?
Honestly, I don't. I've not really met anybody who struggles with glaucoma. I just know that it was one of the easiest ways to get a medical card back in the day. That's about my experience with it.
They've all been cured by it, so that's why you don't know anybody.
So check this out. So like, I was like 15 years old, and my dad was telling me like he was having these weird issues with his eyes. And 15, the early, again, Yahoo, maybe Google. And I'm out here and I'm searching his symptoms, and it seemed like he had glaucoma. So I told him, and he went to his doctor. It turns out he did have glaucoma. And after he retired, he started smoking weed again for the first time since like the late 70s or what have you. And apparently, cannabis brings down what glaucoma is having too much pressure in your eye, in certain, I don't know, nerves and veins and things like that. There's just too much eye pressure. There's so much, like it's about to erupt basically. And what cannabis does is it brings all that eye pressure down. Now that's good in a general sense.
By that definition, I get glaucoma every time I smoke weed. So,
oh, there you go. Well played, sir.
My eyes just get all really pressury. Yeah, no. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, all good. We always love the jokes. So apparently when you have glaucoma, it's a good general practice to ingest cannabis. But here's what you don't want to do. You don't want to smoke weed right before you go to your eye doctor, because then your pressure goes down for the exam, and then it's an inaccurate reading. We don't know what your baseline eye pressure is. We know what your after weed eye pressure is. You know what I mean? And that's not exactly accurate. So for those of you at home who may have glaucoma, I want you to know that. Let me also put this out there. There is a way, I'm not sure exactly what the recipe is, the same way that you have to be very specific about how you make weed butter and weed oil. There is a recipe for making eye drops, cannabis eye drops, and you could take that, cool it, and then just drop them into your eyes, every hour, and just relieve your pressure in your eyes. And my father has tried that, and it works for him.
Nice. Oh, dude, I did want to kind of go back to, you were talking or asking me about like kind of the difference between edibles and smoking, like how they differ. And the way I kind of explain it to like customers and stuff when I worked in the retail spaces, When you smoke, it's definitely more of like a cerebral high, and it feels and changes your headspace a lot more. And then when you take edibles, it's definitely more of like a body high. You kind of get numbness, tingling, or whatever. So I usually recommend, if you have like body aches, either a salve or edibles are great, especially when you dose them properly. And here in Washington, we dose them at like 10 milligrams per gummy, which is a very, very minor dose. Um, and then when you smoke it, it's kind of just like a head shift change. So, yeah, those are like kind of the main ways that each one will affect you. So, like you said, if you have, I guess, like pressure in your eyes, I think like I don't know what the best method versus like the eye drops would be, smoking or taking edibles. I think either could be pretty beneficial.
Is smoking and edibles pretty much the predominant source of intake, or is there other forms of, like vapes or what have you?
I try to stay away from vapes, honestly, because a lot of them are made, and I mentioned this earlier very briefly, but like distillate, which is basically distilling it down to raw THC.
Okay,
And
hold on. We have to explain the difference between vapes and vapes, because when vapes came out, we're talking about a vaporizer. What it does is it heats the weed at a specific temperature, and then you just inhale it for different results. But now vapes came out, and those are like oils with potential contaminants depending on where you source it from, and you inhale that. Would you like to go into the difference, Garrett, or am I just being too nitpicky right now?
yeah, I think that's just like a little too in depth. I don't think we need to worry about it too much, because I think dry herb vapes, which I think is the very first one you were talking about,
Right.
are kind of phased out. Whereas like nowadays, like
Also true.
is on like the concentrate vapes. Nobody really does dry herb vapes too much. It's usually out of a pipe, bong, joint, or whatever. They don't worry about putting it into a vaporizer.
I mean, essentially is it kind of the same process where you have a vat of liquid, and you heat it up, and you're inhaling the vapors of it? I mean, if you go to an older style, it might have a bigger container that you can share it, or where like what's coming out now is more personal.
Yeah, I mean, there's still ways to share it. I think, like, honestly, yeah, I just stay away from vapes, just because again, they're just so they're really bland in my opinion. And there's a bunch of different vapes, but the most common one is, like I was saying, distillate, which is just a raw THC process, and all you're basically smoking is THC and whatever flavor they added to it, which could be like he was saying, contaminants. Or just like added botanical terpenes, which can be derived from fruits or whatever, just to make it taste like grape. You know how they do in these little nicotine sticks and whatnot. They'll just put a flavoring out there to market it to, unfortunately, kids, or people who just don't like the flavor of weed or whatever. But yeah, it's just a very bland or very. I describe it to people as like it's like driving a car and all you have is the gas pedal. Whereas like when you smoke,
Yes.
when you smoke weed, like herb, you have your steering wheel, you have your transmission, you have your gears, you
Yep.
have everything. And what they call that is the entourage effect, and it's just a combination of everything.
And don't more people like get hurt or even die from like the vape concentrate that or it's coming out now? It's just so like they try to make it, they try to put the crunch berries in it just to make it taste the way they want it to. Like, this tastes like pineapple, this tastes like grape, where all that mixing of stuff.
The snowsberries taste like snowsberries.
That was I don't want to call it a government conspiracy, but that was one thing that unfortunately the cannabis industry, it was, got kind of lumped in with the whole Juul bullshit that kind of went around. That was like this vitamin E acetate or whatever they wanted to put. It was this preservative or whatever. I don't even know what it was.
Can I take it a step further?
Yeah.
During this whole situation that we're speaking about, where the mainstream media demonized vaping and different cannabis oils and things of that nature, what they did a full Iraq-Afghanistan situation where they were like, oh, people are dying of K2 and spice. We can't let them have these vape oils. It's like, no, that's one thing, and this is a different thing. We don't need to go to war on both.
All right,
Yeah.
can either one of you, Garrett, whatever, can you explain what K2 or spice is real quick? Because,
Garrett,
like I
that's all
said,
you.
No, Meta, that's you, brother. You brought it up. That's you.
All right, so K2 and spice are the generic terms for synthetic cannabis, and they're sold, in little like baggies, which is about the size of an eighth, and in bodegas and delis across America. For a good while, they sold for like $5 to $15. And the thing is, they were not technically illegal because they were synthetic versions or attempts at synthetic versions of the molecule structure of THC, which is the thing that gets you high. So you cannot fail a drug test on this, but you could get high as fuck. But then it got out of hand once they started banning different molecule structures, and they kept banning them and they kept banning them. And then the manufacturers kept changing everything. And it became more and more likely that you could potentially trigger schizophrenia or different things like depression and mental illness of all sorts by smoking these like lower end strains, like further down the line strains. With that, there is a documentary. If I'm not mistaken, it's like 10 years old on Vice, where they went out to follow a bunch of people, Brooklyn EMTs, and they thought they were going to see like gunshots and shit like that. And basically, the whole day ended up them picking up people who had OD'd on the synthetic version of cannabis. And then they decided to shift what they were going to make their story. And then they released it on Vice as a story about synthetic cannabis outbreaks in Brooklyn. And I witnessed all of that. And I'm not gonna lie. Me and a friend, we couldn't get our weed dealer one day. And he was my roommate actually. And we smoked that shit. We got super high. I decided to like watch movies, and he went to sleep. And this dude came back 15 minutes later crying, telling me that the devil possessed his room. I kid you not. I kid you not. And then there was another person that I knew who was someone that I worked with closely, like as a colleague. And they started dating a person, and she was like, yo, he got me into weed. And I was like, word, you don't even smoke weed. What? Word? Blah, blah, blah. And then one day she came over and she was like, yo, I got some weed. You want to smoke some weed? And it was definitely synthetic marijuana. And I was like, yo, this is what this is. Don't smoke this shit, because I had already had that previous experience. And she ended up keep smoking it. She had a nervous breakdown. She had to move back to her hometown. Like, her life was never the same after that. I've witnessed it. I've seen people smoking fucking K2 on the train, in the subway, like straight up bums who sleep there. It is not a good thing. I am pro live your life how you want to, but this particular thing, I can't co-sign this.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a positive really ever story. My brother even had spiced one time, and he almost went into that schizophrenic kind of realm. He said he kind of smoked it and kind of wound up with his knees to his chest in the corner and felt like he was dying, and felt that he had died. And paramedics had to come and kind of calm him down, and he can't even smoke weed anymore because of how psychologically fucked up he is from it.
Yeah, I had a friend that she told me she was having some edibles, and all of a sudden, like, she was just having a huge panic attack, and she ended up calling the ambulance and going to the hospital. And I think she still every once in a while will try it, but yeah, it's I didn't really think that was you can't really die off of marijuana in itself, correct?
No, you need to smoke something like, I don't even remember the figure.
I think the, what is it, LD50, like half a fatal dose is like 340 pounds of marijuana.
Yeah, I think I was taking my like Washington medical course, and they said something along the lines of you'd have to smoke like 10,000 joints simultaneously.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
To
Like,
even be considered like lethal, like to even
you would have to dilute
somewhat.
your blood with so much wax that you just couldn't function.
Yeah.
So, Garrett, let me ask you one kind of final question before we close out this episode. If someone out there is at home listening, or wherever they're listening to the show, and they want to, like, they have the urge of trying cannabis for the first time. Is there a like go-to method or delivery system that you would recommend?
And the safest way.
Yeah, the safest way.
Yeah, I think generally when I deal with first time consumers, I always recommend, I kind of figure out what their intention is with it. If they have a purpose or goal in mind, but if they just want to try it, I always recommend something with a low THC percentage, maybe 8 to 10%. And possibly something that's like a 1-to-1, even 8 to 10% THC, 8 to 10% CBD. That's probably going to be your safest method. And then like smoke it out of just like a pipe or a bong, or roll it up into a joint. Personally, a joint is my favorite method because it's the cleanest. Smoke blunts are a great option too, but you also have that like nicotine. And I saw you smoking a blunt in there.
Okay, check this out. So I constantly teeter between blunts and joints. I like the joints because they keep me on point where it's like I won't over smoke. Sometimes you just need a joint in the middle of your day. But I like the blunts because, blunts are awesome. So I was smoking a joint today, right? And I was looking at the raw package and I'm like, how? Okay, so it says on
I see you tear your raw thing for the crutch.
Yo, they gave me the wrong one. I didn't get the filter one. I was so upset. I paid for the filter one. It's on my receipt.
That's some bullshit.
It is. So look, I'm looking. It says natural unfiltered rolling paper. Bet. I'm still smoking paper though. So, I mean, come on, smoking a bong, smoking a bowl. I know all that is personal preference as far as ingestion method, but like that has to be safer, right? That has to be healthier.
There was actually a study, and I can't quote exactly what this study said, but it was something.
Yes, this is what I'm looking for.
So when you're inhaling through a pipe, you're inhaling that butane. That lighter is literally just right. So the amount of butane that you smoke is more than you would ever get from the first light of a cigarette or a joint or whatever, right? So it's almost safer to smoke that paper than to just continuously hit that butane.
Also, to your point, if we think about it, having like obviously the smoke is coming through at a much higher temperature when it's getting shotgunned through, let's say a bowl or a bong, or not a bong, but a bowl for sure. That has to affect like, the whole like mouth cancer situation, burning of the mucous membranes, et cetera, as opposed to, taking a short draw from, I don't know, maybe I'm just spitballing here. What do you think?
I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I come from like I said,
yeah, you're right.
Like I said, the first time I smoked was out of a 2-liter. So I come a long way from that. And I don't have any issues from that.
A 2-liter bong, right?
Term. So realistically, yeah, I would just, I stick with my safest way is going to be through a joint.
I got another question about, like, you mentioned something about heating it up. So does the temperature at which, if you're going to inhale it, does that have an effect on how it feels, how it's you're gonna take it in? Do you want it a more cooler coming in? Do you want it more hot? I mean, or does personal preference?
That's kind of a personal preference thing. But again, if you're like thinking of like a medicinal purpose and going back to like what we were talking about vapes earlier and dry herb vapes now are kind of pretty technical. And that you can set the temperature on it so that way you burn exactly what you need to, rather than burning the whole plant matter and inhaling all that plant matter. You can burn off exactly what you need, whether it be just the terpenes and other cannabinoids, and just get that rather than inhaling, again, like I said, all this plant matter. So you can save your lungs that way. So I guess, yeah, that might be the ultimate safest way, but again, it can be costly.
Full circle. Metta World Thief was right.
Yeah, sure.
Because I know on, like, when you smoke a cigar, they suggest that, it's a social smoke environment. So you don't want to be like puffing on it like you're a train. You take a puff every 30, 45 seconds. You want that ash to give you a nice insulation. So you're pulling in more cool. So if you start pulling in hot, tobacco, then it's just not going to taste good. You're not going to get the full leathers or earth or whatever you're smoking. So I didn't know if smoking cannabis was on a similar matter.
Yeah, I would say so, but it I don't think it matters as much as like a cigar would. And also, like I said, there's all this resin that you're basically pulling through this joint, and so you're halfway through your joint, basically all that taste and whatnot and that flavor is muddled through all this pulled through. Like even sometimes you pull away and on the tip of your joint it'll just be, you know, brownish resinous because all that has just really pulled through in the smoke. And so again, this what like the filters and tips, they don't really do much, but they will keep your weed from getting in your mouth. But I wouldn't compare them too much to cigars. As far as like the heat, I mean, as far as a more enjoyable smoke, you probably won't like want to hit that joint 100 times really quickly. But again, it kind of boils down to personal preference at the end of the day.
Okay. So like I said, I think we're going to close this episode out, but Metta, if you wouldn't mind, where can the people find you if they were trying to find you?
At Metta World Thief on all social networks. Flapping Gums Podcast on YouTube, at Metta World Thief on YouTube. Thank you for having me, sir.
Garrett, what about yourself? If people are looking for you, they want to find out more, where can they find you?
Well, my initial Instagram is going to be The Birdseed Botanist. And then, of course, my podcast, you can find us on all pretty much podcasts at Smoking With, and Instagram and Twitter, Smoking With Podcast.
All right. Unless anyone else has anything to add, I'm going to close this episode off here. So I want to say thank you, everyone, for listening, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Firing Synapses with Matt Hamady. I want to thank everyone who listened to the show. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with your friends. Also, feel free to send all questions, comments, constructive criticisms, and new topics to mhamidyphoto@gmail.com. That's MHAMIDY photo@gmail.com. It just may end up on a future episode. If you would also like to help the show, you can follow me on all your social media platforms, which includes Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it's still free. Otherwise, goodbye, everybody.